All right, here with reaction, Fox News contributors Ari Fleischer, Hugh Hewitt are with us. All right, Ari, start with you. Get your reaction to everything. Has it come down to a land swap and security guarantees? Do you see that deal emerging? Could that be a reality? And do you think that Zelensky and Putin could be in a room alone without a moderator of some kind?
Well, they have to be in a room alone. You're not going to get peace unless the two people, the principal people who are the antagonists, have a way to talk to each other. Their nations won't follow if the leaders don't lead. So that has to happen first. No, I'm saying without Trump being there, too. Yeah, no, those two people, Putin and Zelensky, have got to be in a room by themselves talking. And you don't want Donald Trump in there being the referee for every word. The two of them, where the action is, have got to reach some type of accord. The president can help get it over the finish line. But those two have to move the ball down the field. Otherwise, there's no meaningful, long-lasting anything if those two leaders can't talk. But beware Russia. That's the fundamental problem here. President Trump deserves a lot of credit for making progress and being dedicated to peace. Beware Russia. They invaded Crimea in 2014. They waited 8 patient years. Did it again when President Biden was in office when they invaded eastern Ukraine, 2022. What's to say that they won't take land, move Ukraine back from its fortified positions, wait Donald Trump out, and invade again? Do it again. So Ukraine's got to be smart enough not to cede land, that's fortified land, that would allow Russia to wait and then move past those fortifications and take much more of Ukraine.
But that's what I think Lindsey was talking about when he talked about security guarantees, and it came up all day, Article 5-like provisions that alliances that Ukraine can go into with other countries and, of course, buy weapons from the U.S. and build up their arsenal to create a deterrent. Hugh Hewitt, I would prefer, especially in the first meeting, Donald Trump to be in the room. Do you agree with me or you agree with Ari?
I agree with you, and I'll tell you why. If not President Trump, then Secretary Rubio, because I do believe the ill will between President Zelensky and Putin is so immense. 1 million casualties in this war, more than 1 million, Sean. And in 3.5 years, as Prime Minister Maloney said in the clip that you played earlier, nothing has happened because the Oval Office was effectively empty for 3.5 years. And something Senator Graham said. A strong president brings peace. A weak president brings a second invasion, as Ari mentioned, 2 invasions under 2 weak presidents. So I would rather have the strong president on site. But I'd even take what you suggested, Senator Graham or Secretary Rubio, just someone to make sure that it doesn't go south in a hurry, because it could go south in a hurry when they get there. I did note in a wire report a little bit earlier, the Secretary General of NATO has said that Putin has agreed to meet with Zelensky. So that's another step forward. Again, I'm so impressed with what the president has pulled off in 72 hours. You have to be suffering from TDS not to nod an acknowledgement towards what the president has accomplished.
You know, Ari, I don't disagree with your admonition and your warning about Russia and Putin at all. I mean, we know who Putin is. We know what his territorial ambitions have been. It looks like if there was one sticking point, if I had to guess, it's the Donetsk region. Right now, it's split in half, where Ukraine has about half the territorial control. Russia has the other half. And if it comes down to that, and Russia wants all of it, including territory that they have not won in this conflict, that probably would be a stretch too far for Ukraine. I do believe that there will be land swaps, but there's got to be the security guarantees that are impactful, meaningful, that would prevent the third invasion.
Well, 2 things, Sean. One, the western portion of the Donetsk region is the fortified area. Russia's having a slow go of it because they can't get past those fortifications. If Ukraine is forced to abandon those fortifications, then Russia has a lot more access to the rest of Ukraine because now they're beyond those strong defensive positions. As for security guarantees, this is going to be a real test of Europe, Western Europe. Do they have any capability? And I'm skeptical that Western Europe's got the military moxie to actually put troops on the ground in Ukraine that could actually stand up to Russia. I'm not sure Europe has the will to do that. They have the mouth to do it. They talk a big line, but Western Europe has not really, other than the United Kingdom and Poland, most of Western Europe hasn't done anything when it comes to really building their militaries. I just don't know if they've got the ability to put serious security guarantees in place for Ukraine. We Americans should not. We should not be over there doing that.
Absolutely not. No way, under any circumstances. Hugh, I agree with everything that Ari just said, and I'll take it a step further. I would argue, and I did argue in my opening monologue, that, in fact, I blame Europe for a lot of these problems. They didn't want to step up. They didn't want to pay their fair share as it relates to NATO. They didn't want to pay for the continent of Europe and its security against Russia. They helped make Russia rich by purchasing all their energy from Russia. That funded Putin's war machine. So I have contempt for most of Europe at this point.
Well, weakness is provocative. Ari has said that. He's absolutely right. Weakness invites a Putin of the world to act like the thug. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Sean. Last week, the president broke the ice when he laid those sanctions on India because the 50% hammer got everything moving, got the entire process going. And if you read the Financial Times today, Peter Navarro had a piece in there about how India has been the dirty middleman for Russia's money. President Trump has understood, go after the money, and Russia gets a lot more willing to deal. And so whether or not there's a land swap, I'm not willing to say that. I think Donald Trump knows what both men have told him, knows where the pressure points are for Putin. He's already put a little bit of thumb on one of those pressure points. There are other Russian purchasers out there that he can go after with tariffs. I think he knows exactly what the plan is, and it's unfolding in real time. It's kind of amazing to watch.
It is amazing to watch. If you ask me where this lands, not what I'm saying I want or where it should land, if you ask me where it lands, if that plane does land, it's going to be land swaps and security guarantees with Article 5 style negotiated agreements with other European countries. That's what I think. I appreciate both of you. Hugh, thank you. Ari, thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.